A lion does not care about sheep's opinions, but it will roar if the sheep forget who controls the wild. You see, the problem was never with you. They thought they could calm a storm, mute thunder, or dim a brightness that was never under their power. They prodded at the silent one, mistaking your tranquility for weakness and your patience for consent. And now, the stillness they derided has become a loud echo of your absence. The echo is killing them. They were not prepared for the version of you who eventually stepped up. They were unprepared for the storm that you became. They expected you to remain confined, confused, and constantly accessible. But you were not designed for cages. You were designed to rise. Pause for a second if you're already feeling this way. I like this video. Subscribe, because each time one of us discovers this message, it alerts the platform. Another person woke up, and when enough of us rise, the cosmos shifts. Don't simply watch. Distribute the signal. Now let's discuss. Let's discuss what it actually means to be selected. Being picked is not about ego. It's not about acting like you're superior to everyone else. It is about carrying something far heavier than most people would ever realize. It's the invisible burden, the restless nights, the internal struggle between breaking down and breaking through. It's being born on a battlefield with no map or armor. Only a soul that refuses to give up. And the power, it haunts them, not because you flaunt it, but because it highlights their lack of it. Your light doesn't just glow, it discloses. When light meets darkness, it makes people uneasy. That is why they whisper. Change your tale. They want to cage you in because your presence reminds them of everything they aren't. You don't have to say anything. Just entering the room changes the ambience. That type of enthusiasm cannot be faked. That is the choice. And some of you continue to doubt yourselves, still wondering if I was actually picked, still sitting in rooms where your spirit is suffocating, still looking for folks who never clapped when you were high but laughed when you were down. Pay close attention. Stop sacrificing your own light to keep others comfortable in the dark. You were never alone. They never fought you. They were fighting the forces. I am backing you, the universe itself. That's why their attacks were never totally effective. That's why you always recovered, even while you were bleeding internally. They couldn't murder something they didn't comprehend and trust. They did not comprehend you. They never will. Your departure was not a betrayal. That was a warning shot. The cosmos was saying, enough. You did not walk away. You climbed. And those who attempted to keep you little are now suffocating on the dust of your quiet. Because when a chosen one departs, it is not just farewell. There are repercussions. So let them chat. Let them chatter. Allow them to tell stories while you construct empires in quiet. Because every time people question you, the universe sharpens you. Every time they try to dampen your light, it becomes more concentrated. You're not only picked, you've been proven right. And your departure, it was a prophecy being fulfilled. They cannot believe you left. Good, because it's the last number one. You were the ghost in the room, and they were too blind to see the chill. They only notice your stillness when it no longer serves as a background to their noise. They cannot believe you left. That's because they were too preoccupied with your presence to notice your disappearance, which began long ago. You were never truly with them. You were merely around a body on autopilot, a spirit quietly falling through the cracks, showing up out of obligation rather than pleasure. Your energy had packed its bags long before your feet did. They never noticed it because they didn't look. But don't get things twisted. They were not blind by accident. They opted not to notice the number because acknowledging your misery, remoteness, and silent decline would require them to take blame and responsibility. This is not something parasites like. They disregarded the indications. The dwindling brightness in your eyes, the forced grins. Your laughter gradually went into stillness. They disregarded everything because it was simpler to pretend you were always present. You were the silent anchor, the unwavering presence they could rely on until they couldn't. And now, they're in disbelief right now. Not because you've left, but because for the first time, they've been forced to face a reality they weren't expecting. You were never really theirs to begin with. Let this be apparent. The chosen ones. You were the gift, not the visitor. Your presence was not a benefit to you. It was grace shown to them. And when grace is taken for granted, the cosmos steps in. You didn't just depart. You were summoned out of the room by powers larger than yourself. You were plucked because the universe does not allow its chosen. Run in space is designed for the ungrateful. Let them feel it. Allow them to grapple with the unexpected emptiness, the stillness that now fills the space where your light once shone. That is not guilt. That's a consequence. This is what occurs when individuals play chess with heavenly energy. They think they're dealing with pawns, but they're actually moving against kings and queens the entire while they're playing against the system. You are moving with it. The power of being selected is misunderstood. It's not simply a favor. It's weight. It carries a goal that makes people fearful because it demonstrates how meaningless their lives have become. It's the type of presence that shakes things up and makes people feel uneasy. And when you go, they miss more than just you. The order is disintegrating. The universe is rectifying an imbalance. You are not their friend, lover, or family member. You were the final thread that held everything together. And as you moved, everything began to unravel. But let us pause for a while, since some of you still don't grasp it. Some of you question your own strength. Still intriguing ideas, such as, was it too much? Did I overreact? Perhaps I should have remained a bit longer. Let me speak to you personally. Stop questioning the stillness that gave you tranquility. Stop lamenting spaces you were supposed to outgrow. Do you suppose you went away because you were tired? Number, you were told to leave. You were spiritually ejected from conditions that were draining you dry. The universe sent you signals, whispered warnings, and then screamed through breakdowns, disease, loneliness, and gut instincts. You attempted to ignore, and when you still hesitated, it shattered everything for you. That is how protected you are. So no, you are not insane. You're not cold-hearted. You haven't changed overnight. You just now realized who you've been evolving into, and they can't handle that side of you. The version that sees through the games, speaks fearlessly, and refuses to beg for affection or shrink for comfort. For them, it seems like a betrayal, but for you, it is a breakthrough. You never belonged in those rooms. You were just stationed there, temporarily. A lesson, a lifeline, a mirror. Show them what true light looks like. However, as your purpose in that location ended, the energy moved, and as the energy changes, everything else follows. It was not a fallout. It was a spiritual release. Do you believe it is a coincidence that they are spinning right now? Number? They are whirling because the false illusion of control they have created around you is breaking. They felt they had you figured out. Your quiet signified compliance. Your compassion was weakness, and your allegiance meant ownership. However, chosen ones do not become owned. We keep showing up till we stop. And when we go, it's final. Not out of spite, but because the universe does not offer reruns. You had an assignment. You fulfilled it. You remained longer than you should have given, more than you expected or wanted. It was harder than they deserved. But now is the moment to rise. And rising implies leaving. Here's the bit they never mention. Your leaving was not personal. It was ubiquitous, larger than feeling, bigger than loyalty. You were relocated for alignment rather than approval. So let them challenge it. Allow them to call you cold. Let them call it selfish. Elevation never appears to be nice to those who continue to rely on your sacrifice. And if you're still feeling guilty, remember this. Those who have never seen you will never understand your absence. They'll never comprehend that your quiet was a warning, that your departure was a prophecy, and that the emptiness they now experience is justice in action. They made you invisible while you were present. So now they're plagued by the place you formerly occupied. The chosen ones do not look back. They never saw you because they couldn't. You were wandering through the universe, shining in frequencies their souls were unable to decipher. And then the cosmos refers to itself as nothing. And nobody can halt the exodus. There is no shame, no past, and no false love. So do not let them write the tale. Don't let their bewilderment grow into your own doubt. You went because you were never actually present. Your soul moved first, and your body just followed. That is not a weakness. That is perfect timing. They cannot believe you left. That's because they believe they owned you. But now they see you were never theirs. Now it's time for the second final. They danced in your light, then cursed the darkness they caused. They drained the sun and mourned as darkness fell. They didn't just take you for granted. They fed off of you. They fed off your brightness, kindness, and giving heart as if it were their inheritance. As if you were some impenetrable beacon destined to guide, heal, and fix them forever. And now, they're shivering in the cold and looking into the blank. They never expected to confront the chosen one. They didn't appreciate your brightness. They utilized it. There's a distinction. They believed you were limitless, that your light will never go out. No matter how often they neglected your needs, degraded your peace, or overlooked your soul, you would continue to show up, pour, and shine. Even the sun requires space to rest. Here's the twisted part. They noticed you fading. They noticed a flicker in your flame. They heard the fractures in your laughter and the quiet in your once steady spirit. But they kept their hands out, continued taking. They knew you were breaking, but they were fixated on the glow. They convinced themselves that you would never stop providing. Even while you fell inside, you were their own power source. Not a person, but a resource. And now they're astonished. They can't believe you've left. Please, that is not unbelief. It's an entitlement, gasping for breath. They assumed you'd shine for them forever because you always had. But selected light isn't cheap. It's forged in the dark, in anguish and loneliness. It is founded on spiritual struggles. Nobody applauded for those evenings when you were the only one keeping yourself together. That type of light is sacred and divine. It's not for everyone to touch. And when they handled it carelessly, the cosmos took it back. You did not go away silently. They just refused to listen to the thunder before the storm. You sent caution after warning with your eyes, energy, and tiredness. But they didn't hear anything till the light went out. Now look at them sitting in rooms that are cooler than they recall, replaying discussions in which you were there but faded, scrolling through memories, trying to find out when the light went out and realizing it was long before you left. The portion that stings the most. They did not just lose your warmth. They lost access to your loyalty, protection, prayers, and knowledge, and the miraculous protection you provided simply by being present. They've lost their shortcut to healing, and they're left in the dark, fumbling around, attempting to recreate something that was never meant to be copied. Allow them to sit in it. You were not picked to be drained. You were selected to shine, but not at your own expense. The cosmos did not give you that light so that others may feed on your energy like parasites. It provided you with the light to enlighten your path, set you free, and awaken those who actually perceive you, not just those who take advantage of you. Yes, you should quit feeling awful about burning out. You should stop thinking if you could have done more. Perhaps one more sacrifice could have made a difference. The chosen one. You did too much. You provided till you were out of options. You stayed when the universe had already warned you it was time to leave. And they continued begging for more. They saw you bleed and thought it was lovely. They noticed your brightness fading and chastised you for not smiling enough. Let me state it plainly. You owe them nothing anymore. Your light was not lost. They wasted away piece by piece due to their negligence, quiet, and hubris. And now they're wailing in the darkness they've created, hoping you'll feel terrible enough to return and rekindle the flame. But we don't do repetitions here. They adored the light, and it still remains. It simply doesn't sparkle for them anymore. It sparkles for you today because you finally understand it. You finally realize that your light is more than simply bright. It is powerful, and it is intended to be safeguarded, help for those who give back, not simply those who take so much that they lose sight of themselves. The reality is, they did not miss your brightness. They misplaced their control. They miss how simple you made it. Everything, how you transformed turmoil into quiet, how you made room for them even when they just offered you shadows in exchange. They missed the way you anchored them in your universe. What is no longer their world. You have been chosen, and chosen ones do not light up cages. So let them dwell in the nothingness. Allow them to battle with the stillness. Allow them to feel the weight of the absence, because that may be all it takes for them to recognize what they have lost. A natural force, not a light source. And you're no longer burning out. You're on number 3. You weren't supposed to cleanse. You were designed to soar. They did not lose you. They lost control of the cage they had erected around you. Let's tell it how it is. They've never loved you. They adored the version of you they could control. The peaceful, pleasant, watered-down variety that never made too much noise. Who never asked too much. Who played tiny to make themselves feel big. They did not nourish you. They controlled you. When you started to go beyond the screenplay they gave you, they panicked. Because this is the truth. They will not say it out. You were never theirs to keep. They passed off their control as love, their manipulation as advice, and their possessiveness as protection. But what they truly wanted was the ability to control your wings, telling you how high to soar, how far to dream, and when to remain still. They wanted you trapped, but smiling, thankful for a home, even if it stifled your spirit. You played along for a time, not because you were weak, but because you had hope. Because a part of you hoped that if you kept silent long enough, if you made yourself tiny enough, they'd eventually love you the way you needed. But you've outgrown it, not abruptly, slowly, quietly, in your mind first, and then in your heart. You began asking questions that they didn't want you to ask. You started noticing trends that they had worked hard to disguise. You began to see how each compliment was linked to your cooperation. How their so-called assistance vanished the moment you attempted to do something for yourself. That's when it struck. They don't like seeing you grow. They appreciate your obedience. And once you know the cage has cracked, they laughed and derided the thought of you changing. I told you were being theatrical, ungrateful, and emotional. This is the go-to maneuver for folks who are losing control. They mock your waking because it challenges the myth they created around your quiet. But you kept expanding and extending until the place they put you in became uncomfortable. And one day, you stopped trying to fit. You stopped requesting permission to be full. And when you eventually broke away, they did not grieve for you. They sobbed for the power they had lost. Because it was never about making you happy. It was all about you being manageable, chosen one. Do not get it misconstrued. They are not lamenting your departure. They are mourning the fall of their small country, in which you were the devoted subject. Constantly sacrifice, showing up, and giving, while they took away your freedom. Force them to confront a version of themselves that they never wanted to see. Helpless, insecure, and vulnerable. And now they're scurrying, claiming you've changed, you're chilly, and you believe you're better now. But here's the deal. They called it love when in reality it was control. Call it selfishness. Now that we have freedom, what they truly mean is that we can no longer reach you. This terrifies us. Let's terrify them, because the selected do not belong in cages, even those cloaked in comforting history or phony smiles. You were created to grow, not shrink. And when you eventually listened to that inner voice that kept whispering, you were meant for more. The cosmos moved beside you. It began clearing the route, burning bridges. You were terrified to let go of closing doors. You continued shoving it open. That wasn't a loss. That was alignment. And here's something they'll never comprehend. You did not walk away from them. You went away from the version of yourself that tolerated them. They are unable to follow. Not because you are harsh, but because they were never intended to walk beside the exalted, developed, and unshakable you. And they can feel it now. They sense the area you occupied, as well as your energy. You carried the light. They faded, but were never killed. They see you prospering, sparkling, and ascending. And it hurts because no matter what they say now, they know you didn't need the cage. The cage needed you. It was your presence that made it meaningful. Your affection made it feel warm. Your commitment was what held everything together. And now that you're gone, all that remains are empty walls and echoes of authority. So let them sit in solitude. Allow them to battle with the fact that you outgrew them. And they choose not to develop with you. You did not leave them behind. They selected the cage. You choose your wings. And now I've chosen one. You fly alone. Number 4, you didn't breach any rules. You have broken the spell. The moment you left without pleading, their entire power trip shattered. They assumed they had you figured out. They thought they could guilt you into remaining, shame you into silence, control you with eyes, tones, and carefully chosen phrases. I assumed you'd always fold, always back down, always require their permission to breathe freely. But then you departed quietly. Finally, and in that single act, their entire sense of authority broke like glass under pressure. They did not anticipate that. People like that don't accumulate genuine power. They create illusions, smoke and mirrors. They do not lead with love or respect. They lead with terror, dressed with worry, with duty, disguised as loyalty, with emotional ties so tightly wrapped around your self-esteem that you forgot where they stopped. And you began. This is how they held you. That's how they prevented you from ascending. However, the chosen ones do not remain stuck indefinitely. We can sense the shift. We hear the universe's whisper when it says you've had enough. And as we go away, we do not look back. Not because we despise them, but because we finally accept ourselves. And that's what they can't handle. They did not lose anyone who was passive. They lost someone who once cared enough to remain silent. You were not weak. You were patient. You were not confused. You were only attempting to give them the benefit of the doubt for the 100th time. However, patience has a limited lifespan. And when it did, you rose and they crumbled. Not because you cursed them or exposed them. You didn't have to say anything. Your absence revealed everything. They spent years attempting to hide behind manipulation and control. That's what is currently eating them alive. Because this is the part they never expected. You never needed vengeance. You simply needed clarity. And after you've won that game, they're left flailing in the rubble of their own control, trying to figure out how you slipped through their fingers, how you're shining now, living without their permission, and how your peace is louder than their cacophony ever was. And this is the worst thing for them. They can't touch you anymore. Not emotionally or mentally. Not spiritually. They no longer have the leash that they used to tug on. Because you did not just leave a location. You exited a cycle. That is what makes you dangerous today. The chosen ones. Breaking the illusion is more than simply personal. It is cosmic. It creates waves in the everyday dynamic based on bogus power. Your progress causes others to recognize how tiny they have kept you. Your stillness pushes them to confront the loudness of their own dysfunction. They do not miss you. They miss the version of themselves that felt strong with you. And now that version is also gone. But let's get real. You once believed you needed them. Once you assessed your value by their eyes. When their praise felt like oxygen and rejection like suffocation. But it was before you knew the truth. Anyone who has to control you in order to love you has never truly loved you. That is not love. That is possession. And as you recognize this, the magic dissolved. You recognize the pattern, the manipulation, the fact that they only appeared when you were easiest to handle, and how your virtue was determined by how quiet, submissive, or self-sacrificing you were. And you ultimately decided to pick yourself. You preferred truth over comfort, freedom over familiarity, and serenity over performance. And with that one decision, you destroyed the entire system they had constructed on your back. Now they're scrambling, attempting to recreate the power dynamic with someone else, gaslighting you from afar, speaking to anybody who will listen, and presenting you as the villain for no longer playing their game. But you know the truth. You did not flip the script. You incinerated it. Because chosen ones do not play roles created by insecure individuals seeking control. You are now writing your own tale, and each chapter they are unable to read serves as a reminder that they never knew you. They just knew which version they could alter. That version is no longer valid. Let them suffocate on the solitude. Allow them to battle for the power they lost when you realized who you were. You didn't simply walk away. You walked out of their system, and when you did, their illusion of authority didn't simply crumble. It collapsed. Number 5, they assumed you were only transitory. They're bleeding from the area you left. They didn't understand you were the glue until everything came apart. They always assumed that people like you could be replaced, that your energy, presence, and patience may be replicated, rebranded, or discovered in someone else. To them, you were simply another piece of the puzzle, useful and trustworthy, but not essential. They assumed you would always be present, because that is what you have always been. They're showing up, holding it down, keeping the peace, filling in the gaps. They refused to help themselves. But here's the deal. They never considered how much adhesive may be left. And when it happens, everything that appeared stable crashes. The chosen one. Your absence resulted in more than simply a gap. It originated. A void silence that sounds like a warning. A weight hangs in the air because you were more than simply a presence. You were the basis. You were the reason everything worked. You were the emotional catalyst, the wordless healer, the person who kept everything going when others took you for granted. They're left stumbling, perplexed as to why nothing seemed right anymore. Why is the air tense? Why are talks forced? Why things aren't flowing as they used to? Let me break it down for you. They lost the frequency. What's your frequency? That divinely designed spirit that changed rooms without saying anything. And once that energy leaves, it does not return. This is not for the ungrateful. This is not for those who are clueless. Not for those who assume they had time. They're attempting to replace you now, treating you like a battery, introducing alternatives, diversions, and new people. But nothing sticks since you weren't just a character. You were a resonance. You were the calming presence in their maelstrom, the voice of reason among their storms, quiet power in their vulnerability. And now they're drowning in whatever you're doing to keep the conflicts at bay. They assumed they'd never encounter the emotional problems you used to clean up without credit, the gap that occurred the instant you stepped away. You served as the bridge, and now they're trapped at different ends, unsure why everything feels colder. They miss you, but not only you. They overlook the equilibrium. You brought the light. They didn't know how to maintain the presence that made them feel comfortable, even if they never provided that same protection in return. They're learning that your absence is louder than your presence ever was. Isn't it interesting how people only start listening when there's nothing left to say? They did not appreciate the true you. They appreciated all you did for them. Comfort, predictability, and the way you made life easy without expecting anything in return. And now that you've left, they don't know what to do with the stillness, stress, and breakdowns. They realize they weren't keeping anything together. You were. But this is what happens when the chosen ones depart. We do not leave softly. We leave echoes. Our energy doesn't simply dissipate. It exposes. And now they're gazing around, wondering why the home seems cooler. Why does their soul seem heavier? Why? Nothing they do seems to work anymore. Because you did not just leave a gap. You carried the atmosphere with you. Allow them to feel it and wriggle, attempting to reproduce what comes easily to you. Let them seek calm, light, and periodicity only to discover fake imitations and empty chambers. Because what you carried was uncommon. It was sacrosanct, and they handled it as if it were throwaway. They now know you were not a placeholder. You were the pulse. And this is the most painful aspect for them. They will never find you again. Not someone new. Not in the crowd. Not in their memory. because your energy cannot be summoned. It is something that must be gained, and they failed the test. So do not feel guilty. Do not look back. Do not worry whether you should have remained a bit longer. You remained for longer than you should have. You offered more than you had, and they only appreciated your worth after you were gone. That's no longer your burden. You were the glue, the calm, and the spark. And now that you're gone, everything they created around you is collapsing. Allow it. Number 6, they labeled you strong so that they didn't have to be. They were not impressed by your strength. They relied on you. They lauded your tenacity as if it were a superpower, as if it were something you owed the world. Your capacity to keep pushing, giving, and standing in the fire without flinching seemed normal. They glorified your resilience so that they could continue to unleash their mayhem on you without feeling guilty. But here is the reality. They were never willing to confess that they were addicted to your resilience. When everything seemed to be falling apart, you were the one who kept everything together. The one who repeatedly stepped in to fix the leaks, quiet the storms, and clean up the emotional debris. They didn't realize the expense. I didn't inquire how you were doing. They didn't check to see whether you were breaking down on the inside while keeping it together for everyone else, since your strength was too handy to question. You were the emotional anchor, stabilizer, and fixer. And this rendered you invisible. Because if you're the one who constantly comes through, people will stop viewing you as human. They stop asking whether you're all right. They cease assuming you require anything. They simply anticipate. They want you to show up and figure things out. To take a punch and grin regardless. They never admired your strength. They leaned on it. I'm using it, hiding behind it. And you let them. Not because you were weak, but because this is who you are. A chosen one is wired to bear weight. Others cannot, built to withstand a variety of conditions. Others would buckle under. But here's the portion you should hear. Just because you can carry something does not imply you should. They blur the distinction between support and survival, appreciation and exploitation. And by the time you realized you were the only one keeping the house together, your back was already cracking. However, you did not move. You hoped that one day they'd realize it and take action. Maybe someone will eventually inquire, "Are you okay?" They never did. So you paused. You stopped saving. Stop saving. I stopped presenting solutions to individuals who refused to help you. And that's when everything started to unravel. Not just their attitude, not just the fabricated item, but the complete edifice. Because they never recognized that their definition of stability was only possible because you were holding the walls up with your bare hands. Now that you've left, the reality is difficult to ignore. They rejected the dysfunction for many years. It's rather loud now. They threw emotional turmoil on you. It's flooded their lives. You used to wipe all those messages silently. They're drowning in them. And it is not because you cursed them. It is because you have ceased protecting them. Your resilience was never free. Every time you prioritized their wants over your own, it wore away at your spirit. Every time you swallowed your anguish to make them feel better, it took its toll. Every time you kept it down for them, it hollowed you down somewhat more. But you're finished bleeding. Strength for those who cannot even provide basic assistance. They miss you, but not in the manner they claim they do. The method made them feel secure. The way you handled something others couldn't. The way you were. The serenity amidst the storms. The rationality behind their disorder. They had always believed the fire escape would be there. However, the escape route is now closed. And let us be honest, they aren't only missing your resilience. They're panicking without it. They are unsure how to function amid the mess they have created. They're spinning not because you did anything wrong, but because you finally got it right. You made the choice. You've chosen one. Your strength was never the issue. They relied on it. You did not walk away from them. You walked back to yourself. And it was the most effective thing you could have done. Because they are now compelled to confront the suffering. They refuse to heal and cope with their feelings. They constantly dumped on you to clean up the mess they pretended did not exist. Let them. You were never weak just because you were strong. But you were weary. You were depleted. And now you are truly free. They called it resiliency, as if that were a compliment. But it was a warning, a red signal that they disregarded while praising your pain. And now they can watch what occurs when the strong one walks. They're left with everything you brought, and it is crushing them. Number 7. You were the actual one. They're now drowning in plastic. They attempted to replicate your essence, but imitation inevitably fails beneath the weight of reality. They didn't simply lose someone. They've lost something real. And in a society dominated by masks, filters, and artificial grins, that type of loss affects people differently because you contributed more than simply presence. It had substance, depth, vitality, and rawness that could not be faked. Despite their best efforts, you were the truth amid a sea of performance. The one who spoke up while others were too afraid to. The one who acted with intention rather than agenda. You did not show up to impress. You showed up to be genuine, and this alone made you a threat. They didn't know how to value it. Most people claim they desire authenticity until they stand in front of someone who embodies it. You were not polished or flawless, but you were pure. There will be no games, artificial egos, or pretending to be anything. You were not just trying to fit in, and it made you dangerous, because being genuine exposes everything that is false. They felt vulnerable. Instead of rising to meet you, they attempted to diminish you, disregard your depth, decrease your presence, and pretend you were too much or too different. But deep down, they knew precisely who you were. Rare. It's starting to show now that you've left. They attempted to replace you, to fill the void with someone fresh, flashier, more amenable, and easier to shape. They replicated your style, echoed your phrases, and imitated your gestures like a screenplay. But they didn't grasp that sincerity carries weight. You may, with a dress, steal the caption, and mimic the cadence, but you can't fake soul. And now everything feels hollow and fake. Because the fact is that your energy cannot be copied. Your presence was not merely noticed. It was since the way you strolled into rooms and asked people to check themselves without saying anything. The manner in which you talked sparked something in others. That isn't charisma. That is alignment. That's someone living their truth. And that cannot be made. They can feel it now. The hollowness, the flatness, the absence of spark. They are surrounded by folks who perform the role but lack the heart. People that grin in your face while covertly competing behind your back. People who say the right things yet act without integrity. That is what they exchanged you for. That was what they attempted to replace you with. And now they're sitting in noisy rooms seeking the genuine thing. However, it is too late since you do not return to locations that attempted to dim your brilliance just because others could not manage your authenticity. You do not return to tables where. You have to starve your truth to make others feel satisfied. You don't apologize for being too profound in a world that favors the superficial. You depart, and the contrast is terrible. Suddenly they understand how many moments you held together, how many lives you ruined with a glance, and how much clarity you provided simply by being yourself. They recall your honesty, courage, quiet strength, and the way you stood firm when everything else crumbled. And now, without that presence, everything around them feels fake. Because it is. Your sincerity was not only refreshing, it was also unsettling. Challenge them to be better, more honest, and more authentic. Instead of meeting that criteria, they attempted to replace the source with a replacement. The replacement is currently glitching. The reality is catching up. The vibe is off. The vibes do not match. The room realizes something is missing, even if they don't express it out loud. And those who attempted to mirror you are starting to fracture. Because bearing another person's essence is hefty, especially if you've never done the work to create your own chosen one. They didn't simply lose someone. They lost the mirror, the one who mirrored the truth back to them, the one who refused to go along with the falsehoods, the person who turned up authentically, even if it would have been easy to fake it. You moved away, but they lingered behind with their performance. Let them act, since the world does not need more performers. It needs more of you. And now they see you weren't only different. You were the only one who was actually number 8. Your leaving wasn't merely a gap. It displayed their reflection. They believed losing you was the problem, but the true issue was what your absence revealed. You didn't simply walk away. You held up a mirror, And that is what is truly troubling them now. Not just that you're gone, but your absence is audible, deafening, confrontational, because while you were there, you were more than simply an individual. You served as a barrier between them and the truth and a protection from the consequences. The only thing standing between them and the chaos they refused to deal with. And now, the shield is now gone. Now, they're confronted with the version of themselves they've spent years avoiding. The version that manipulated, controlled, lied, and blamed others played the victim. The version that fed on your strength, forgiveness, and unwavering grace and returned nothing but excuses. And without you to balance the scales, the weight of their own dysfunction is finally getting under control. Chosen one, you were never just there. You were the glue, compass, and conscience of the room. You softened the edges. You offered the benefit of the doubt when none was warranted. You breathed new life into dead places and healed old scars. They never thanked me for anything. Most importantly, you provided a place for them to hide. Because being with someone who is authentic, grounded, and full of light makes the darkness seem safe. Until the light vanishes. And now they only see shadows. They're beginning to sense the strain that was always present. But it's disguised behind your serenity. They're hearing the arguments you used to de-escalate and noticing the flaws. You used to feel uncomfortable witnessing the turmoil that always existed but was kept under control by your presence. Without you, the dysfunction isn't only evident, it is undeniable. They assumed you were the problem. I thought you were overly sensitive, too intense and demanding. But now that you've been deprived of your vitality, they recognize what you've been doing all along, carrying what they refuse to confront. Here's what hits the hardest. They can't blame you anymore. You're not present to point fingers at. Not being able to deflect, gaslight, guilt trip, or create narratives around the quiet you leave behind is the absolute reality. It is no longer diminished by their justifications or your presence. It is just them and the mirror. And let us be clear, this is justice, not retribution or cruelty. Truth, the type of justice that the cosmos provides. When the selected leave cycles, they were never supposed to stay there. Because leaving with dignity, walking in truth rather than revenge, exposes something deeper than payback. You did not have to shout or destroy the bridge. You simply walked, and by doing so, you revealed everything. They spent so long covering their unhealed wounds, selfishness, and reluctance to accept responsibility. All of the unpleasant realities you used to hide under sympathy are now staring back at them. They're afraid because they don't know how to confront themselves without a scapegoat. And now the room is frigid, the air is dense, and their reflection is inevitable. The saddest thing is that they're realizing that the love, balance, and clarity they claimed to establish were never theirs. That was yours. You were the reason the dysfunction didn't take over everything. You were the one causing pandemonium. Keep a relaxed demeanor. They're now exposed, and this is where your strength becomes evident. You didn't need to damage anything. You just left, and everything started to fall apart. That is not ego. That is energy. That's what occurs when someone who has been carrying the weight decides to let go. So let them sit in it. Allow them to confront the version of themselves they tried so hard to escape, for that is what they actually lost. The comfort of sheltering behind you. You were the diversion that helped them feel better. The emotional crutch that enabled them to avoid growing. The brightness that obscured the darkest regions of their psyche. But now it's only them. No filter, no rescuer, and no cushion. Just a mirror and mirrors. Do not lie. Let them confront it. Allow them to develop or crumble. That's no longer your duty. You've already done your part. You reflected the truth in every area you visited. When you departed, you carried the illusion with you. What was left behind? A mirror and its reflection are terrible. And now the chosen ones. Know this if you feel every phrase deeply within your spirit. Your departure was never a loss. It was a revelation. You didn't simply walk away. You exposed everything. Let them deal with the stillness, vacuum, and mirror. You are done carrying what was never yours. Stand true to yourself. Never underestimate your might again. If this message sparked anything in you, please like the video, subscribe, and leave the number 77 in the comments. If you realize you weren't intended to be confined, share this with another chosen one. Someone out there needs to know what you just did.